Welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing confessions from real people who've given me permission to tell their stories. These are raw, honest, and sometimes shocking admissions that people have made anonymously. Let's dive in. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to get paid just to live with someone and be their friend? Well, one person did exactly that, and here's their surprising story. It's sort of an odd situation, but when I was moving to a new city for college, I joined a Facebook group about finding roommates in the area. I didn't have a lot of money and would be working to pay my own rent, so I wanted somewhere cheap. After 2 potential places fell through, I was losing hope. Then I got a message from my roommate's mom. She basically explained her kids struggled to make friends and keep roommates around. She was super desperate and offered to pay half my rent each month. All I had to do was live with her kid and be their friend. I was also super desperate to find somewhere to live before the semester started, so I agreed. I've held up my end of the deal, despite the fact that I absolutely hate my roommate. They are disgusting, have no social awareness, completely helpless, super dramatic, have an insanely messed social life, and generally just suck to live with. I absolutely hate them, but I get to live in a really nice apartment for pretty cheap. Despite being a nightmare roommate and person, I do still feel bad for them. I know if they found out they'd be devastated, so I've never told anyone about it. And here's the second story. One person stole 2,000 of hours from his employer without getting caught. Here's how he did it. For many years, I was in charge of the time and attendance system and other IT systems in my workplace of 1,500 employees. I developed a small intranet app to make it easy for everyone to see who was clocked in, out on business, vacation, etc. That info was available in the main system, but it was a pain to access from there, so everyone relied on my system instead. What they didn't know is that I placed some code in the system to always show me clocked out after 4 p.m. I'd go home at 4 every day, complete a 60-minute commute, then actually clock out from there. This gave me 5 extra hours each week. If someone had checked, I'd have been fired. But I figured people are lazy and tend to trust what they see on screens like that. I ran that scam for about 8 years, week in, week out. A rough estimate is 2,000 man-hours stolen. Moving on to the next story. I started working from home recently and found a loophole. Okay, so I, 22F, am using a burner account because my job could be at stake if someone found out. I recently started working from home in the finance sector. My job consists of taking a lot of calls. Don't want to give away too much. We do a lot of overtime as calls can drop in at 1 minute to finish, and we can't just hang up. Mind you, calls can last from 2 minutes to 2 hours depending on what the customer needs. I was sitting there a couple of weeks ago, and it was 45 minutes past my off-cue time. It was a Friday night, which is drinking night, and your girl was thirsty. The call was looking like it was going to be at least another 30 minutes because there were a couple different things the customer wanted to do. Well, here's where it gets bad. I had just had a customer before this one who got a call and had to go, which gave me the bright idea. So the way out system is set up, we can see the customer's phone number on the screen. Well, guilt in my veins and Long Island iced teas on my mind, I picked up my phone, set it to private, and the customer says, "Oh, I'm getting a call, gotta go," and said he'd call back. I had muted the mic on my phone so he couldn't hear me and hung up as soon as he picked up. I got to leave and have a drink, and I didn't have to continue talking to a rude customer. I was ecstatic, never told a soul. But whenever a customer is extra rude or talks down to me or calls in and goes on for too long, I call them. It works like 90% of the time. I hate that this is me and I do feel bad. I just needed to tell someone. One mother is sharing her raw and honest confession about regretting motherhood after just 4 months. Here's her story. I have a 4-month-old baby and I regret becoming a mother. I had always wanted to be a mother. It was my lifelong dream. I looked at motherhood as my ultimate goal. I wanted a good relationship with my partner and a baby. I couldn't wait to be pregnant and feel the glow everyone talked about, and I couldn't wait to have a cuddly baby with whom to snuggle and coo at. I knew it would be hard too, the sleepless nights and the crying and the overwhelm, and I was so sure I was ready. My husband and I love each other. We are best friends, and before we had our baby, it was the happiest we had ever been. Pregnancy was a nightmare. I was constantly ill, swollen, and in pain. I couldn't wait for it to be over, but I also felt an insane amount of guilt for how much I hated being pregnant and the fact I felt no connection to the baby. And then I had my baby 4 months ago, and it's been absolute hell on earth. My husband and I try to share the load as equally as possible, but he works a lot more than I do. He takes care of me, but the distress I feel is inconsolable. My mother helps me, but I confess I've never been more unhappy. My baby is not calm or cuddly. I know babies cry, I know babies are hard, but even my PD said she's especially difficult. She had severe reflux for the first 3 months of her life. Then she had the sleep regression. She's not sick, she's healthy and beautiful, and I love her, but I wish I could go back and never have had her. Every day makes me want to peel my skin off. She cries nonstop, all day, unless she's asleep, and with the regression, she barely sleeps at all. I have started shaking in terror every morning before I get up at the thought that I have to start over. Every day is the same nightmare. It feels like I'm in hell. And yes, she sometimes smiles at me, and she coos, and it swells my heart with love. And I kiss her chubby cheeks all day, and when she falls asleep in my arms, I want that moment to never end. But this experience has been so incredibly traumatizing and isolating. I've never felt more exhausted and miserable in my life, and my husband is so happy. He is such an involved and loving father. He is so supportive and helpful, and he's still my best friend. But my daughter is so all-consuming we barely have time to each other. We've had sex once in almost 6 months, and it's not for lack of wanting. I feel like such an ugly, terrible person. It's not like I want her to be gone. It would be the most devastating thing that could ever happen. I just wish I had made a different choice. I hate my life now. I miss my old life. I wish I had never had my daughter. I wish I had never wanted to be a mom. I wish I had realized I was too weak to be a good mother. I feel like I'm drowning. Her update recently, I am in genuine awe at the amount of empathy, love, and support in the responses to this post. I never could have imagined how many people felt this way, and the responses have been so touching. You all have truly saved my life today. I have cried so much, but I feel much less alone. Parenthood is so hard, and I am so grateful to all of you. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I flushed a girl's car keys after she mocked me at a party. Back in 2009, when I was 17, I was at a party, and after using the bathroom, I accidentally got a small pee stain on my beige chinos. One of the girls noticed and started whispering to her friends. They kept looking at me and trying not to laugh. I pretended not to care, but I was completely embarrassed. A buddy of mine later confirmed what I suspected. They had been talking about it and laughing behind my back. Later that night, I noticed the same girl had left her car keys on a table. In a moment of immature teenage revenge, I slipped them into my pocket. After the party, everyone went for late-night tacos. While there, I went into the bathroom and flushed her keys down the toilet. Nobody ever saw me do it, and nobody ever found out it was me. I remember her being stressed about losing them, but I kept my mouth shut. Looking back, she laughed at an embarrassing moment, and I responded by doing something much worse. At 17, it felt justified. At 34, it just feels petty and mean. I've never told anyone this, and every now and then I still feel guilty about it. Weird text I got from a hookup I had 25 years ago. To be clear, I am old now. I am 50. I sing along with music at the grocery store and get excited when we go to Olive Garden because I just want chicken parm and a salad swimming in dressing without judgment. But I was young once. Last night, while in the midst of a rewatch of West Wing, I got a text. It was a strange sort of, "Hey, do you remember me?" The number was unknown, so of course I didn't. They had the same area code that I have. Although I haven't lived there in years, I still kept the same number. The text seemed shy and not at all like spam trying to fish for information, so I engage. They told me the name of a small city they used to live in. It was a bedroom community close to where I lived in my mid-20s. It didn't give much away as to their identity, since it was again all in the same area code. It's D. The memory of him came flooding back. He lived in a historic building that had been converted to condos. I'd been fully impressed. He continued to be kind and respectful as he reminded me where we'd met for dinner and how he was so attracted to me. I certainly didn't feel it at the time. He seemed out of my league. I was all sex appeal then, but it seemed cartoonish when I was standing next to handsome men of average height who had their acts together enough to live in buildings that had names. Too tall, too curvy, too talkative. It was surreal hearing him say he thought of me often and thought so highly of he. Thought I was amazing. I waited for the other. Shoot a drop. Inevitably, it did. He talks specifics about a sexual encounter. He thinks about it often. There I am, sitting next to my husband, who is well aware of who I'm talking to and how I know this guy, and he mentions that. On one occasion, I brought toys. I don't remember this, though it seems like me. I quickly shut the conversation down, and I'm a little embarrassed I took part in it. I haven't told my husband how this conversation finished. I'm not meeting up with this guy. I'm not going to continue this conversation. My husband is certainly aware that I had some wild years, and I know this guy from those years. He can do that math. Here's the confession. I cannot stop thinking about being at his place and riding him while snow fell softly outside. I stole the queen from my flatmate's very expensive chess set. A few years back, I had a really horrible flatmate/Osh roommate. He was textbook painful to live with, messy, rude, passive-aggressive, arrogant, and just awful to deal with. I spent lockdown living in a flat with him and 5 others for over a month, and we all got to know each other pretty well, a while into living. Together, he somehow ended up getting a girlfriend. She also moved in, and he made her sleep on the floor as there wasn't enough space in his single bed. He and his girlfriend finally decided to move out a few months after lockdown. Yay. Like a week before, he yelled at me and accused me of trying to get into the bathroom multiple times while he was showering. I only went to use the bathroom once while he was in there, found the door locked, realized it was occupied, and turned to go and wait in my room, but then he threw the door open and started hurling abuse in his towel. I was still angry about that incident at the time of my theft. In the communal garage, he had a super expensive wooden chess set packed and ready to go for the move, so I took a queen. I found it both symbolic and satisfying. For those who don't play, it ruins the set. Can't play without a queen, and not really the sort of thing you can buy individually with a set like the one he had. I rendered the set about as useful as a jalapeno-flavored lubricant. My only regret now that I'm super into chess was not just taking the whole board and making him think it got lost in the move. We were going to be late on rent or have no food in the house, and I found a bunch of money. My paycheck came in, and it wasn't going to be enough. I was working full-time and my partner part-time. Anyway, I lied and said that I would handle groceries and rent would be okay. My partner said okay and didn't ask much more. Truth is, I had found a wad of cash, about $400-ish of 20s, and pocketed it. I've never seen that many 20s together at once in my life. I still feel horrible, especially because I know who was sat at that table. This was years ago, but I can still see their faces, a big, huge family on a Sunday morning after church. I justified it at the time because they were talking about going on the lake to fish on their boat and how mad they were about the gays. I am a trans man, my partner at the time was a man, taking over America and the church, and something about their pastor saying boys should be men and girls should be women. And everyone nodded and smiled, all creepy-like, even the kids. I was one of those kids once, but that's besides the point. Take my bias with a grain of salt. I've grown up since then, and I've learned that some people will simply just be different, and good Christians exist. Anyway, I took the money, pocketed it, guiltily took their $10 tip on a $250 order, and went to bus. I was already holding a grudge, but there is no excuse. I was wiping down theater table when the man who made the gays comment came back in and said, "Did you find anything around this spot? I had a few $100 in cash for our trip to Six Flags. Let me know if you find it." I said, "Yeah, for sure. I'm so sorry you lost it," and made a big show of checking around the place, my pocket burning a hole in my slacks. I pulled back the booth cushions, got down on the floor with my phone, flashlight, and apologized, then reported it to my manager. The store put up a message in the group chat about it, and everyone was on the hunt. I lived in a different state at the time that was incredibly Catholic, and I knew my life was over if I ever admitted it. But we and our cats got food for a couple months, and things were okay for once. I still feel guilty, and sometimes pass a church in the town I'm in now, having the thought of going in and confessing that I took money and didn't tell the owner of it when asked. I'm not religious. I mean, I was as a kid, but not anymore. My family still is, and it comes up time to time like an ugly cancer that never goes away. I intentionally nuked my boss's legendary 60-hour store playlist out of pure spite, blamed it on a glitch, and I deeply regret it. I need to confess this here because the guilt is eating me alive, and I genuinely feel like a terrible person for what I did. I work part-time at a cozy indie bookstore and cafe. My boss is generally a good guy, but he has been completely obsessed with the store's perfect vibe. His crowning achievement was a massive 60-hour Spotify playlist he spent literally years curating. Regulars loved it, but honestly, after hearing the exact same tracks on loop during long shifts for a year straight, it was driving me completely insane. A few days ago, we had a stupid argument about my hours, and I was left to close the shop alone, feeling incredibly frustrated and petty. Out of pure spite and a toxic urge to get back at him, I grabbed the store iPad, opened Spotify, and intentionally unfollowed, deleted, and completely wiped his master playlist from the downloads and the account sidebar. I wanted to punish him, sabotage his perfect vibe, and force him to play something else for once. I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. The next morning, my boss came in, fired up the iPad, and immediately noticed his life's work was gone. He was visibly devastated. He looked like he was about to cry, staring at the screen like his dog just ran away. Panicking at the weight of what I'd actually done, I played the clueless card to protect myself. I looked him dead in the eye and lied, telling him I saw a thread on Reddit saying the new Spotify iOS update had a massive bug that randomly wiped custom playlists. He totally bought it and spent the whole day cursing out Spotify on Twitter. I haven't slept properly since then, watching him spend his breaks. Trying to desperately rebuild years of musical curation from memory makes me sick to my stomach, It was an incredibly malicious, childish, and cruel thing to do. Over a minor work disagreement, I completely crossed the line from a frustrated employee to a toxic saboteur. I deeply regret letting my petty anger hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and I don't know how to look him in the eye anymore. I made a huge mistake, so I scammed Apple out of $2,500. This happened about a year ago. I have a 2024 MacBook Pro. Brand new was around $2,500 itself, so I tried to take good care of it. A few months in, I closed it without realizing a charging cable was sitting in the middle and apparently gave the screen internal damage, making about 1/5 of the screen unusable. That sucked, but apparently something worse happened. Sometime around mid-2025, I woke up and tried to open my MacBook to do some work. It wouldn't turn on. The charger wouldn't even light up when I plugged it in. It was like it completely bricked. There wasn't any other damage I was aware of, so I'm not sure what happened. I brought it to an Apple store. They figured it was probably something with the logic board and shipped it for repair. I had to pay about $800 for the repair. Sucks, but it is what it is. Cheaper than a new MacBook anywhere near that quality. At the same time, they replaced my screen. I got a 2-for-1. Great stuff. I had gotten it back on a Friday night when I was set to go out with some friends. I picked it up after work, came home and did the basic setup so it was all ready to go. I went out, got pretty drunk, came home, grabbed a Coke Zero from the fridge and prepared to watch some YouTube videos on my freshly repaired MacBook before bed. It took about 20 minutes for me to drunkenly knock over the entire bottle all over my keyboard. It almost immediately powered off. I killed it. I basically reverted everything back to where I was before. I did the dumbest thing imaginable. Right after I had just gotten everything fixed, after a depressive sleep, what did I do? I went back to the Apple store the next day. I said, "Hey, I just got this fixed, and the same issue is happening. IDK, what happened?" They apologized and sent it back in, telling me it's a re-repair, so there won't be a charge. A few days later, I got an alert from the Apple Repair Center. They had found liquid damage. Shocking. Huge surprise. Who could have predicted that? And they wanted $2,500 to cover it or they won't fix it, because it wasn't something there before. So, what did I do? I called Apple. I said essentially, "Hey, this is a re-repair. It says there's liquid damage. I don't know what that's all about. I just got this back and sent it back in." Initial person was really confused. I don't blame him. He escalated it to a supervisor who was an incredibly nice and helpful woman. She profusely apologized, said there must have been some kind of breakdown in their process and said they'll cover it and repair it. $2,500 roadblock went away. They replaced everything needed, again, and sent it back, and I paid nothing. Lesson learned. Only thing I was worried about was that some Apple tech might have gotten chewed out. I have a friend who's a former Genius Bar employee who assured me that's unlikely, so I hope nobody did. Take care of your expensive stuff, y'all. I unplugged a loud ice-making machine next to my hotel room and put a fake out-of-order sign on it. After a long drive, I got the last available room on the 3rd floor. Unfortunately, the only working ice machine was on the other side of the wall behind my bed. Every few minutes, the rumbling would wake me up. After hours of frustration, I stepped into the hallway and saw a line of families with kids constantly using it. Once the hallway cleared, I unplugged the machine and hung an out-of-order sign on it. I took off the snack machine next to it. Maybe not my proudest moment, but I finally got a few hours of sleep. The next morning, while checking out, I heard several guests ask where they could get ice. The front desk kept apologizing and saying all the ice machines were down. I felt a little guilty, but after being kept awake all night, I figured warm drinks weren't the end of the world. Work colleague has no idea I've seen her naked. I've worked in IT for a long number of years, now in a senior role. When I first started at the firm I'm at, they had no internal IT department to speak of. They outsourced support, and as such, had very little vigilance or management of their IT function. No computer policies, security policies, etc. One of the reasons I was hired was to build a department to do all that and strengthen their IT management. We hit the ground running, quickly started to instill more controls over IT devices, and one of the first things I did was remove local admin rights from all computers to prevent users installing anything and everything they wanted and substantially decrease risk of a security breach. Most staff quickly got on board with this as senior management laid down the law, but a few users wanted to retain local admin rights for some particular pieces of critical software they used, which updated often and required admin approval to do so, often out of hours when IT wasn't available. Senior management agreed to this on a limited basis. I quickly discovered that amongst this small group of users who were allowed local admin rights, most respected the slack they had been given, but there was one guy who was, let's say, problematic, always resisting anything IT tried to do, didn't want us remotely connecting to his computer for support, deliberately obstructive, etc. The biggest issue was that he felt he could do anything he wanted. For example, if he wanted a 3,000-pound piece of software, he didn't have the patience or discipline to formally request it via the proper channels and wait for approvals and purchase. He would just download a cracked version at home onto a USB stick, then bring it in and install it. This was obviously unacceptable for a multitude of reasons. It's important to note also that he was going out with another staff member who worked in the same team. We'll get to that in a second. As expected, we soon got wind of his behavior around IT, and I raised it with management, explaining how the firm was liable for software theft, copyright infringement, and more if we were audited. They asked me to do a discreet sweep of his computer remotely so we could build a potential case for disciplinary. Fortunately, he often left his computer turned on and signed in. Another thing we asked staff not to do: always shut down so updates and group policies can be properly applied on startup the next day. So I stayed late one evening and started inspecting his machine remotely. It wasn't long before I found a folder on his C drive containing lots of software installers for commercial software that we didn't own. There were a few miscellaneous subfolders as well with gibberish names, so I started looking through them also, which is when I got a bit of a shock. One of the folders had multiple explicit photos of his girlfriend, our fellow staff member, in various poses in a bedroom, but in each and every photo she was totally naked, not in a bikini or topless. Everything was on show. She was also holding a bottle of wine in a few, and whilst I couldn't tell for sure from static photos, I think she was a little tipsy drunk when they were taken, judging by her expressions in a few. My immediate reaction wasn't titillation or the like. I was kind of mortified for her and wished I hadn't seen them. She was a very friendly and kind person who I got on well with from day one, as she made a point of making me feel very welcome to the firm, and I was now in a position where I wasn't sure how I'd look her in the eye again. What has been seen cannot be unseen and all that. I finished up and went home, and thought long and hard about what to do. Do I tell her and or management and risk huge embarrassment for all of us? No doubt word would get out and other employees would hear about it. Maybe she would have been shocked that her boyfriend put the photos on a work computer, but maybe she already knew and it was some weird kink they had where he looked at them during work hours. Then there was the fact that no one should have pictures of anyone naked on a work computer. However, the pictures were between the two of them and obviously never intended to be seen by anyone else. I'd seen them buried in a folder in his PC, which I was digging through secretly, as opposed to them being seen online by many people. Did she even remember he took them if she was drunk? The whole thing was giving me a headache that I'd never asked for. There were reasons to tell and reasons not to tell, and if I didn't know her and respect her, I probably wouldn't have cared and just went by the rule book. In the end, I took the easy route and did nothing. I told management about the illegal software but didn't mention the photos. They cracked down on Mr. Pirate, and he removed all the crap from his computer that wasn't meant to be there. I suspect he knew IT had taken a look through the machine, but if so, he never mentioned it. 2 years later, he left to take a job with another firm, and I haven't seen him since. However, his then-girlfriend subsequently became his wife, and she still works at our firm. They have kids now. We talk sometimes in the canteen or passing in the corridor, and she still has no idea I've seen her naked. In hindsight, I sometimes think now I should have taken a different course of action. Maybe there would have been much embarrassment, but the truth would be known. Update. Thanks for the replies, both good and bad. It's all been food for thought. And also those who said I'm a creep, thanks for your perspective. I didn't take the photos, share the photos, put the photos on a work PC, or ask to see them in the first place, so not sure why I'm the creep. But hey ho, I can't change people's opinions. Also, contrary to what some think, I have not spent years ruminating on this. I was fairly content with my original decision and had largely forgotten about it, but some events in my extended wider family in recent years have come to light and lies, cover-ups exposed, which got me to thinking about things like this in my own life and how my work colleague has no idea any of this happened. I guess there's an element of guilt there and an ethical sense of she has a right to know that compromising photos of her were put on a work computer. This has been playing on my mind recently, but the more I read the replies, the more I accept that telling her at this point would not benefit her at all, only me and any guilty feelings I have. So it would be a somewhat selfish action to take. I'll continue to say nothing, bury it in the back of my head, and close that door. My first call to my mother from prison was hilarious. We barely got through the hellos. I had to tell her something I thought she'd find interesting. A lady she knew from our hometown was my across-the-aisle bottom bunkie. She had murdered her husband. I was in there on an F5. My mother's words, "You're in there with murderies." Mom, they didn't sentence me to summer camp. Next phone call was her telling me the salon was robbed by a guy with what she said was a fake gun. She refused to open the register, so he stole the whole damn register. I was angry at the time and told her people would kill you for $20, argued back and forth about it. My brother was mad because he had to buy a new register. I was lucky enough to have 8.5 more years with her after I got out. Lots of trauma beyond our control created a dark sense of humor in our family. We joked about the day before she died in 2017. Edited to add for those that read my comment about the meth bust close by when she asked the cops not to park in the salon's parking lot. My SO now was actually the guy that supplied the Sudafed pills the guy was cooking meth with. I am happy to say he is almost 6 years clean come August. This is the small town life. A one-night stand, and then I met her again at a friend's house. So I'm 56 and occasionally do some stand-up comedy. Last year I did a set and usually leave after because once I do the last set, it flips from jokes to karaoke. I stayed that night, smoked a few joints outside as I gave up drinking. Went back in and met a woman who was 45. Tells me she was once a stripper and in Hustler magazine. We ended up at my place, had some fun, and said maybe I'd see her again if I did more stand-up. About a month later, I was at a coworker's BBQ, who is 20 years or more younger than me, when lo and behold, there was my one-night stand. She's his GF's mother, LOL. We never said anything, but did reconnect after the night at his place. Always a fun reminder of 2 nights of fun every time I see him at work now. Update, I should add she definitely is not wife material. Wasted both times I met her, and definitely does more than weed. I'd say the novelty of stripper and hustler model makes her fun for a night or two, or more if we cross paths again. This is all I got for you all today. Thanks so much for watching and staying to the end, and thanks again to everybody writing it.